Vito and Victoria. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I okay.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Oh, we need more energy. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Where we go? I feel like a very bad school teacher. Okay, so some of you were here yesterday in the evening, so I apologize for what will be a repeat. Charlotte and I have a dance show that we do that has been patterned, but I would like to welcome you to the 16th edition of Climate Change Impacts and Responses. Been a great journey. We began in Pune, India. We have weaved our way through Berkeley, through the Catholic University in DC. We've been to Brisbane, Australia, Rio de Janeiro, Mauritius, now, and last year we were in, remind me, Vancouver, Canada. How can I forget for Canada? And now we are here in Poe. So next stop is Antarctica, right? I think that would be a bit of a disaster. But look, this theme this year is purpose-driven organisations, and I think there's no better way to explain what we're trying to do through our set of purposes. One of the things with the conference that we've tried to do is it's wonderful to see you all here in person. We have a fantastic program. I think there's 15 to 20 countries that are represented in person and online, which is a fantastic thing. It's very important to have these conversations in international ways. It's a diverse group of people, people from all different intellectual and professional and personal backgrounds. And again, that's a really important part of what we're doing. The other thing that we're trying to do is to break the kind of temporal boundaries of what a conference is. You know, we have 2 days, we get inspired, we meet great people, and we kind of disappear back into the corners of our world. And one of the things that we do that is unique is we build our own technologies, and you're now in version 2 of that, which is CG Scholar, and the conference event microsite, it all lives there. That's you can access the program through the QR code. We have an printed program with course. And what we're trying to do is get you to add to what we see as a time capsule. You know, conference is a time capsule, but also like an open-ended kind of thing. So each of you have a presentation page. You'll see on the last tab, there's an online only asynchronous where people have uploaded digital content. We encourage you to do the same. You do it after the conference. And then what we try and do is build a resource that you can come back to and engage with. You all have personal profile pages there. You can connect with people over time. So one of the purposes that we have with this conference is not just to begin a conversation here, but to find a way to extend it into digital space. The other thing is that we offer publication pathways, which I keep reminding people. And that publication pathway is a wonderful way for us to capture the conversation in a formal research object. So we have our International Journal of Climate Change Impacts and Responses. It is Scopus. We are growing in stature. I'm very proud of that. So not only can you be an author of that journal, we would love you to be a peer reviewer. If you want to sign up for that, that would be fantastic. But we also want to give that content back to you. So with your Scholar account, you can sign in the bookstore. You can get access to 16 years of wonderful content. So if you like the kind of people and ideas that you hear in the next 2 days, then you'll really, that's a wonderful resource for you. The final thing I want to say is a little logistical thing, just so you make sure you have make the most of this conference. After this plenary session, we have a session type called a talking circle. It's a unique thing that we do. The talking circles are grouped. I think we've only got 2 rooms this year to try and keep it together. One is just a general talking circle, and the other is one based on the special focus. And what I ask you to do is pick which one that interests you the most. Go to that room, introduce yourself, say who you are, where you come from, what you do, when you're presenting, and it's a really nice way to keep off a conversation together. I think that's it from me. I hope you have a great 2 days. If you have any questions about anything, please come and grab me. And now I'm going to hand the floor to Charlotte.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello everybody, welcome at Explore Ed School of Management. My name is Charlotte Contenfers, I'm the faculty dean of the school. Our dean is just here, but he has a meeting, he will come later to see you. I would like to thank you all for your participation and engagement in this enriching event. Special thanks to the organizer and everyone who was involved in the achievement of this conference, to Common Ground Research Network for Shooting Our School, to Tamsin, Philippe, Victoria, Vito, and our colleague Hada. It is a pleasure to welcome you in Pau at Explore Ed School of Management for this conference. So I will turn the floor to my colleague Hada, who will introduce the topic of the panel and the topic of this conference. So I enjoy your today here in Pau. I hope everything will be okay, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. And in my turn, I would like to welcome you all. We're so delighted to have you all from all around the world. It is a real pleasure to be together to discuss the topic that concerns all of us, which is climate change and specifically purpose-driven organization. So as Charlotte told you, today it's going to be a panel with Vito, and Victoria is going to introduce as well the topic after me. Yeah. So we have the pleasure to welcome Vito, who is our guest speaker. Vito, who has lots of experience on purpose-driven organizations, and more specifically, it is the practical side that he has throughout his experience at Unilever, where he implemented the sustainable purpose. He is also the founder and the director of Purpose House, and he's going to talk about this at the beginning. He will also share with us his journey in research on purpose-driven organizations and provide a brief overview of his experience, what I was telling you about, of leading innovation teams at Unilever, including extracts from his innovation work, academic studies, and purpose-driven projects. He will also highlight key components of purpose practice with examples from established companies such as IKEA, Lego, etc. He will tell us more about this. He will then discuss his key insights from both practical implementation and theoretical perspectives, addressing the necessity for purpose to be lived rather than imposed from external forces. So, Victoria is going to tell us more about the main ideas and insights of the panel, and then it will be Vito to tell us even more in detail and to delve into the discussion of purpose-driven organization. Please, Victoria, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you all and welcome to this year's climate change theme Common Ground Research Network. As you may or may not know, I'm the academic lead of this theme. Can I just check, because last year a lot has happened for all of us between this and last year. How many of you were in Vancouver last year? Well, sort of. Online. Yes, thank you. And any of you online also? No? Okay, so this is the real benefit of having of going regionally different, because you really pull in a different part of our community. So that is also good, because it means that this topic, which I briefly touched on in my plenary in Vancouver, you will be able to kind of see from afresh. Although the concept of purpose-driven organizations, the governance that holds it in place, and what this means for a sustainable future is really profound. It is the basis on which we really can turn good ideas about the sustainable future and trying to change the status quo into practice. So it's, for me, the most, alongside with governance of it, the most practical topic you can have on sustainability, but it requires a paradigm shift which means it requires excavating some of our deep assumptions that we have about the economy, about organizations, about business, things that we have just grown up with unquestioning, that the news doesn't question, that leaders do not question. So we have to get there in order to be able to see the box that we are in that is clear and give it a name, create a new box, let's call this a governance framework, that actually can align with a sustainable future. And that's what purpose-driven organizations and the concept of it really helps us to. So we're sorting out slides, but it's fine. You don't. I will carry on because I will also set my timer because I'm here to introduce Vito, but to set the frame. Because Vito is going to talk about the research that he's been doing and the practice. But as I was just hinting at, we need to understand some of these base concepts in order to really understand the profundity, as in the importance of what Vito is saying. So, firstly, the really important thing to understand is that the purpose of an economy, and when we say purpose in this context, we can use purpose to mean objective, right? Just like we can use sustainable to mean anything that endures. But when we say sustainable, these days, we don't mean that. We mean something deeper. When we say purpose these days, we mean connecting to the root of purposefulness. And purposefulness, meaningfulness, living a purposeful and meaningful life means to live in service of the good of another, because that is what gives our life meaning. We exist and we feel good about ourselves because other people tell us, you know, it's a good thing you're on planet Earth. You make my life better today because you opened the door for me. You make my life better because you're my parent, my friend. And that's what gives us meaning. And what we want to avoid is meaninglessness. The idea that, you know what, it doesn't even matter if we're here. And that's the root of course of suicide and other things. So there's something very deeply profound about purpose as a concept. But we have to then remember, what is the purpose of an economy? An economy is there to take resources and transform them for the well-being of society as a whole over the long term. So, and if you look at any economic textbook, sometimes it's just a paragraph. That's the point of an economy. So if that's the case then, let's think then about what is the definition of well-being. Because if we're here to produce well-being, what is it? Now that is the ultimate philosophical question. We will not resolve that, and we shouldn't. We should be constantly debating it because it's a normative concept. What is it to have a good life? Now we used to debate that all the time. It was the original university topic, but we forgot about it. And the reason we forgot about it was because we decided the market could decide this. That if we set the market up in a certain way, especially in a post-Hitler world, in the post-war world, gosh, really complicated talking about like ideals and ideology and stuff. Why don't we just kind of pretend those things don't exist? Let's leave them at the door. Let the market decide. Everyone knows what their own well-being is. And we're generally rational creatures, aren't we? So let's create a system whereby everyone decides what their well-being is and chooses it from the marketplace. And also, let's just assume that, yeah, humans are complicated and we can't really model that very well. So let's just assume that we're self-interested and selfish. And we are financially self-interested because this makes sense. Because when you are buying if we set up a market as the place that provides well-being, then we can buy our well-being from the marketplace. And if we are self-interested in that we want a good life, then obviously it makes sense that we want more money to buy more income from the marketplace. And that means that it's really clear what the role of government is to make more money for the people in their population, because then they can buy more well-being from the marketplace. And to make sure that that country, these are the other countries, has more money, so that the purchasing power of those citizens is higher, so we can buy more well-being in the global market. And so what has happened is that finance became a proxy for well-being. Financial income at the level of a government, at the level of a household, and at the level of a company, which is also assumed to be self-interested and financially self-interested. If we all play that role of financial self-interest, the market will do its thing, held in place by competition, which is supposed to be the antithesis of self-interest. As long as everyone plays by the rules, sticks to the law, as long as you have a democratic system that allows any issues with this market system to be grounded in law through the democratic process, households just need to think about how much money they have and what they want to buy and consume. Companies just need to think about making as much money as possible, and governments just need to think about keeping the financial books of GDP as high as possible. And so we end up in a world where what we count is money. We assume that it equals long-term well-being for all, the goal of the economy, and no one is governing if that is true. If you expand a system like that for 70 years, then you will end up in a place where we are now. Because it isn't, to complete this side of the story, it's important to say that it's not just that we have governed for a goal, we've had a goal of long-term well-being for all, which, by the way, is also the definition of sustainability. If you take Brundtland's report and reword it, well-being, not just now, but in the long term, and not just for some people, but for everyone. And I encourage you to remember that, because that is the practical point you can always return to when you're asking, is this sustainable or not? Is it aligned with long-term well-being for all? If we think it, because we won't always have the data we need, if we get the sense that probably it will, then, and often we know this, that's the right thing to do. If not, not. So the important thing there to remember, I mentioned about the goal of long-term well-being for all. If we think companies, enterprises, organizations, people come together to innovate for something, we endow them with resources and say, you can use our precious shared resources to do something. And with the hope that this would be contributing to long-term well-being for all. But of course, the innovation filter and the governance within organizations has been, as long as it makes us as much money as possible and in the short term. So, but the second part of that, so this is why governance is the frame we need to understand, because governance is made up of three key things: direction, oversight, and accountability. So direction is, what am I trying to achieve within what parameters? In other words, I'm trying to make a cup of tea, I have 5 minutes and I have no sugar, they're my parameters. I am an organization that is trying to, make widget, X, that's not a purpose, let's do a purpose. So an organization that's trying to solve climate change, and my parameters are the law, the risk I'm willing to take, how much money I need to make in order to satisfy my stakeholders, the natural, social, and human capitals I rely on, etc., etc. So these are the constraints, and we get this wrong. At the global level, that means not only is long-term well-being for all not the goal, but we've assumed that the most important thing we need to count is stocks and flows of financial capital. If we think about all the regulatory systems, what do we ask companies to report on up till now? Stocks and flows of financial capital. Last year. In the last 10 years, we have started, So I'll show 2 slides to kind of pull together, and you can have these slides afterwards. Essentially what we have, if I would leave you with anything, it's that the goal of the economy is sustainability. And yet we have an unsustainable world. We have been governing the outcome, but now we have the answer. We have the data, even though we weren't looking for the data. So we now know that the economy, society's operating system, is essentially undermining the goal that it should be creating. So this is the moment to recognize that, get into the heart of it, everyone, no matter what your discipline. This is our task, to understand the economy, how it's governed, why it's going wrong, and what good needs to look like. Luckily, we've gone a long way there. So at the crux of it, finance is not a proxy for well-being outcomes. It might or might not, it's bound to be in some way. It has a role to play. What role is a question we need to keep asking. So we have a GDP economy that is driven, made real by profit maximizing organizations, and driven by financially driven, powered by humans that are assumed to be financially driven. Consumption machines, in other words. This is, in essence, and this is where purpose fits in, we need to move to a well-being economy. Look online, look at the Wellbeing Economy Alliance, Wellbeing Economy Governance. France, under Sarkozy, did a lot on this with Stiglitz, who used to be the head of the World Bank. This is not a new concept. It just needs to happen now at pace. Then you have purpose-driven organizations at the meso level. Now, this is the key unlock, because an economy is an idea until you operationalize it. Governments are also organizations. So how we govern the organizations matters. Purpose-driven organizations are governed for a goal of long-term well-being, for all of the reasons to exist and what innovation is there to do, within parameters that are not just protecting the health of social and environmental systems, but are also really have parameters of decision-making that mean we have a healthy climate, a non-negotiable minimum criteria. So no matter what your purpose is, you're not destroying the basis of long-term well-being while doing it. And having those hard parameters, which we have not had up until now, is what ESG regulation worldwide is trying to do. But it's not fast enough and it's not systemic enough. And we are going to potentially kill our enterprises if we go down that road, because we are essentially saying, change your whole business model, which currently is asset stripping in society. Change that business model so that it's within the thresholds of a healthy climate. We're not going to mention biodiversity because it's a little bit complicated. Not that biodiversity loss cares about this, but we just think that this box, we own this box and this is what's pragmatic and feasible. Real feasible is that we need to deal with all of these issues at once and redesign our business models now. We do not have enough time. And then in the micro level, all of this is powered by meaningful work and lives. Because helpfully, we are as human beings purpose-driven. As I said, we've just put that at the door of our organization. We've stripped it from a decision-making process. Purpose-driven organizations harness that power, bring it to life, direct it strategically through innovation that matters. And so of all these three levels that are absolutely vital, the key unlock is purpose-driven organizations, because they operationalize the economy and they enable meaningful work and lives through providing places that people can work, that give them the ability to live meaningful work and lives, and producing products and services that allow people to live meaningful work and lives. And that might be, for example, demarketizing some products and services that we used to not get from the market, but now we've been told we have to, for example. These are the sorts of innovations that purpose-driven organizations would do. And I'll leave it there because and you can, and just to say, I have a website, www.victoriahas.com. There's some lovely people built me for free because they wanted this message to get out there. It has all the resources, including a lot of academic work on purpose, on governance, on all sorts of things. The key thing to say, when people say to you, if you pass this message on, they say, yeah, that's all very nice, but it's a bit ideological, isn't it? And, we're not going to get there. Yeah, it's not very pragmatic. The real pragmatism is that, honestly, and ask yourself this question, if we do not, given everything is breaking down now, very fast, you only have to look a little bit at the science to know this, what is the chance that we lose the market economy? That we lose organizations, not just businesses, but every organization involved in the economy, that we lose the ability to freely exchange because we have created the wrong frame. And instead we end up with a few people in the room making decisions for us, or perhaps AI. And I believe that if you look at the realities across the world, when people want to throw out capitalism or throw out the market economy, really they mean throw out the form of the market economy that's killing us. And then we can decide what level of government intervention we want, but we have a governance frame that's working for us. So on that note, I pass to Vito. Vito is a colleague of mine. We've worked and discussed closely some of these fundamentals, so you can know that there's a bridge. A lot of people are still on the journey of really thinking and being deep about what is purpose. And you'll see a lot of purpose washing out there, but you can be assured that Vito really gets to the heart of the matter. So over to you.
Thank you very much, Victoria, for the introduction and the context setting, very useful for what I'm going to discuss with you. Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Vittorio Cerulli. I met some of you last night, and I see a lot of new faces, so that's very good to hear. Today, I'm going to discuss broadly did an overview of the academic and practice-based field of corporate purpose. I am the founder and director of Purpose House, that is a collective of professionals in the field of sustainability, strategy, and research that help companies to define and activate their purpose in everything they do, how they live inside the business, as well as what they communicate and report. So today I will tell you a little bit about the work that I do as a practitioner. On the side, I'm also doing a PhD at the University of Nuremberg in Germany on the topic of corporate purpose, in particular how societal forces, how institutions are shaping the future of this practice. Before we get there, we noticed that we have a very diverse group of people today, which is fantastic, and it also, I think, is one of the beauty of working at the intersection of multiple fields. So I would like to have an understanding of who do we have in the room today. So before I tell you about me, I would like to hear about you, in particular, for example, starting from, if you can raise your hand if you come from academia. So if you come from, yeah? Okay. Are there any practitioners in the room? Any people? Okay, good. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4. And we can wear multiple hats. Yeah, like Victoria and myself, we wear multiple hats. So you can raise the hand multiple times. But okay, good to have some combination of both. And I think that's also one of the unique point of common ground is to create a common ground or to bridge practice with academia. In terms of geography, raise your hand if you are from Europe. Okay, and from outside Europe. Okay, almost a majority of people from outside Europe, but yeah, okay. In terms of fields of work and research, also I'm interested. Please raise your hand if your work or research is in the field of management, business, so. Okay. Okay, like 30% or less. How about education? Oh, okay, interesting. 40%. And more climate change, sustainability. Okay, the majority. Yeah, obviously, again, wearing multiple hats here. Any other field you are representing that I'm missing? Economics.
Law.
Yes. Communication. No, what did I hear?
Communication.
One is communication, one is engineering. Okay, fantastic. Architecture, thank you.
Supply chain.
Supply chain. Migration. Yes. Linguistic. Wow, what a mixed room, guys. It's gonna be hard to appeal to everyone. You know, I do my best talking about my field. I guess that's what works always, and what I'm doing, and trying to find some connection.
And remembering that everyone who doesn't work in an organization.
True, yeah. We all work in organization. Thank you, Victoria. Any other purpose expert or that's a person that is working directly with the field of corporate purpose or individual purpose? Not directly. You are all doing it, but you don't know. But nobody is direct. Okay, good. Thank you. So what I will talk about today, an introduction about my path and my background and my present focus of work, as well as introducing you to the purpose key concepts and definitions and components of this practice, and as well as diving into the purpose into action. So what are some of the challenges and results of, you know, taking a conceptual field and bringing it, a conceptual practice and bringing it to the practice, the field, right? And so that's what I'll talk about. In terms of my journey, I'm originally from Rome, in Italy, and I worked for many years in leading innovation team at Unilever, where I was in charge of new product development, and particularly in the food sector. And then while I was working in Unilever, gradually I sort of embed more and more somehow sustainability principles into my job because of the leadership of the company at the time was very visionary. So there was space for me to bring that as well as obviously my personal interest. So I did an executive course at the University of Cambridge, the Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership, and that's also where my path crossed with Victoria, and we started sharing and collaborating more and more to bring this theory of purpose-driven organization into the practice. So while I was still at Unilever, I developed a strategy, an internal strategy for Unilever to help other business units to define and activate their sustainable purpose. And because of the impressive scale of that organization, I had the honor to bring this strategy to different local teams around the world. And then at some point, I decided that I wanted to focus 100% on this. I still remember when my boss told me, okay, Vito, you had 3 priorities this year, classic end of year review. One was purpose, one was growing our strategy in new markets, and one was creating amazing communication. You over-delivered on purpose, but the other 2 objectives, you didn't do anything. So it cannot go on like this. And she was amazing boss, very, very empowering, but that was definitely a turning point. I realized that I had to move out, right? I had to kind of bring this focus and passion to the outside world, and there was not space to further develop that inside the company. So I decided to leave, and I set up Purpose House, which basically trying to bring this purpose strategy to different companies across the sectors, with obviously the challenges that each sector brings. But in the last 6 years, we have worked with many organizations that you can see here in the bottom part, from financial companies like Visa, other food companies like Twinings, Arla, Frosta, Migros, insurance company like CSS, Palance, pharmaceutical like Sanofi and other companies. Always with this big ambition, and which sometimes clash with reality and the challenges of embedding purpose, and we'll discuss that today as well. But to be honest, if I have to reflect on really what inspired me to do that, and I think looking backwards, it was probably my upbringing, and the experience that I've seen growing up with my father. My father was a business owner, and particularly he was owning a bakery, which is still there in Rome, is a Forman's bakery, Vittorio Cerulli. And it was a tiny, small shop, still there. So if you go to Rome, I can give you the address. What I had experienced by seeing a business owner of a small shop, was set basically my bar on what businesses is and what businesses do. So I saw my father obviously being standing for the quality of his product, very proud and very passionate about bread and the importance of, the basic, of what a business is deliver this product, and being proud of also the ingredients that get into it. His definition of quality was very broad, included the quality of the ingredients, the relationship with the suppliers. So it was very, very broad. Then also, I was normal for him to, for example, give opportunities to marginalized communities through his shops, like hiring people that he saw passing by in the community that didn't have a job to help him out, like paying there was a big gypsy community in the area, and he was hiring some of the young people to help him, for example, with some tasks like unloading the trucks or empty the beans. It was normal for him that he needed help to drive the business, and he needed to include the people that were marginalized. And then also what he was doing was giving away the space for the community. So the forno, the bakery, was used for community events, like if there was something happening that's a birthday of a local child, or even a marriage reception, or even simply a Roma match being shown on television. He was very happy always to provide the facility. So for me, that was always the standard basically of what a business does, and it was a tiny shop. Then working on many other organizations, big organizations like Unilever or other companies, I realized that essence of what the role of business is and the license that the business has in society gradually get diluted somehow across the different levels of the complexity of an organization. And it becomes much harder to have this clarity about what is your role in society, and also make sure that every pieces in your puzzle have this clarity about it. So for me, the purpose, when the first time I hear about it, when I was at Unilever, I said like, right, that's exactly what we need. Because for example, Unilever at the time was very visionary, very ambitious with their sustainability strategy from on the outside. Like I was reading on the newspaper about the sustainability strategy, but when I was in the team, I was like, I don't see this, there was a gap, And then because I was in the innovation team, I was not in a sustainability team. And the sustainability conversation was siloed in the sustainability team. And us from innovation were there like hungry for sustainability. And we were like, how do we connect? Because the language was different, the priorities were different. And then the purpose conversation arrived. And it was the perfect bridge, to connect a team like innovation and product development to sustainable development goals. How do you bridge that gap? That's in big organizations, it's very wide because of the different competencies that there are, right? So purpose was exactly that, and then made me realize how eventually it was connected very much to my understanding of what is the role of a business that came from this little shop in Rome. Yeah.
Do you want some water?
So talking about the theory and the key concept, like what do we mean by purpose? Because it's a subject that is used together with different qualifiers like corporate purpose, brand purpose, team purpose. What do we mean? And being an academic now, I know how important it is to define exactly what you're doing. And I'm 1.5 years through my PhD, and I think this time has been useful to define exactly what am I doing, because obviously all the academic world, I have a purpose, is so vague because it can apply to so many different fields. And while in the practitioner field, this is an opportunity because it helps you to create bridges and common ground with other teams. For academics is a weakness because you're not able to go deep if you haven't defined the field. So the work that Victoria mentioned was watershed moments, to really discuss work that she authored for a coalition of institutions and businesses through the British Standard Institution was very important to be able to crystallize exactly what do we mean by organizational purpose. And this is the definition that came from PAS. So purpose is an organization's reason to exist that is an optimal strategic contribution to the long-term well-being of all people and planet. And she explained very clearly before my interventions why this matters, why their role, the meso role of organization in society is so essential, and at the same time, why this, that sounds a relatively simple sentence, is actually a shift in the paradigm that we're living compared to the business as usual, where the contribution, where the role of business in business as usual is more to maximize shareholder profit, right? So the fact that an organization's role is to contribute to the long-term well-being of all people and planet is a big shift in the way our system works. And something that also clarified clearly is the connection between management and sustainability. Because for a long time, purpose has been associated with just the goal that organization is. And many people said like, how about if my purpose is to make a lot of money? Is that a purpose of my company? Well, no, it is not, because it doesn't really contribute to long-term well-being of all people and planet. So finally, we're seeing a definition that helps practitioners as well to say to companies that profit maximization is it's a goal, you can have that, but it's not a purpose, right? So, and if you're interested in purpose, we have to go beyond that, where profit are a mean to an end, and the end is the contribution to long-term well-being of all people. Then the next question that I get a lot in academia is like, oh, right, yeah, now you are relabeling something, like now that you have defined what it is, it's like that sounds like similar to their mission, strategy, vision, you name it, especially in the management field. There are many other concepts that are associated to this idea of direction given to the company. So the next step would be how to differentiate. And something very helpful is realizing what each component plays in the organization and how they bring something different. Obviously, strategy helps you clarify what are you doing as a business. In particular, what are the pillars of your work? How are they gonna help you organize your resources and everything? But it doesn't say about, for example, how you're gonna reach that goal. And that's the whole of mission, how to clarify how your values are aligned, your way of working, and how are you gonna deliver on the strategy. Then there is the vision, that is the where you are going with this, what is the destination endpoint that you are aiming to reach. And then there is the purpose, which goes into more, why are you doing what you're doing? What is the reason of being of the organization, right? What are you want to add and why you want to add it? And we can extrapolate also the key components of purpose from different practitioners that work in this field. There has been a lot of publication, but also simply interviews that we've done with different people. For example, the CEO of Whole Foods, that again, coming from a food business, there's always this interesting angle of, the role that a food company plays in society. And for him, it was clearly the fact that like people don't live to eat, and neither must business live just to make profits. So profits, as we said before, is an end, is a mean that helps you reaching an end, but it cannot be the end itself. Similar in terms of the CEO of Deloitte highlighted a very important point, which is the internal role that purpose plays, because he said that an organization culture of purpose answers the critical question of who it is and why it exists. They have a culture of purpose beyond making profit. And I think this point is particularly important because purpose is distinctive compared to other concepts because it really builds on this duality between channeling internal motivation and understanding really what is your innate willingness to do something as a company and as a business leader, as well as what is the external contribution that you're going to make. So there's always these two components. And that's why my research, and I present a little bit more in a specific section about a project that I'm doing, it's trying to understand the delicate balance that there is between this internal and external component. And that's why, for example, the role of regulations has to be pretty careful because we know that regulations can crowd out somehow innate motivation, and it will become just ticking a box, to say like, oh, we have done the purpose. Whereas, there must be a more concerted and orchestrated role of the regulators together with the business leader to avoid this crowding out the motivation, because purpose lies on this duality of innate internal motivation and external commitment of the company to society. The last quote, also interesting, from Pixar, and it's always interesting how leaders verbalize, their own purpose and the purpose of their own company. And in this case, it's all about, having a positive impact of the work. Obviously, you have to dig deeper to understand really what do they mean, then understand what are the actions that they're taking. And that's what we'll dive into the next slides, also understanding, okay, these are all interesting definition, but what does it actually mean in terms of practice? And I will break down what are the key components of the practice of corporate purpose. But first of all, I mean, to visualize a little bit again what Victoria said before and help us understand why purpose is a paradigm shift, we need to understand where are we living? What is the current paradigm we're living in? And is the paradigm where companies, through the free market, maximize profit for shareholders, and they expect then consumers to provide to their own well-being, right? So, and the purpose of the companies is to, through the market, to maximize profit for shareholders. Whereas what purpose is bringing is a new connection where companies and well-being are interrelated. And the purpose of a company is to deliver well-being for a specific group through the market. So it is not just expecting consumers to provide to their own well-being, but companies have a responsibility to deliver well-being for the specific groups, right? So that's the paradigm shift. This is the big difference that we're seeing. And also, eventually, what we are seeing is that companies can be both differentiating and unifying in addressing and delivering on well-being. Because one of the other challenges, like, oh, so that means that all companies will become the same thing, that all companies will somehow get together and there will be no more competition or no more differentiation because they will all become sustainable. That's not the case, because and that's the beauty also of the management field and business and innovation, the ability of always finding new ways of reaching a point with innovative and distinctive solutions. So companies will, in a differentiating yet unifying way, deliver well-being. Any questions so far?
Maybe this year. So talking about delivering companies delivering a product or services that eventually. What if so that's mainly should be the purpose and direction. However, what if the process of doing so does not fit within the also the sustainability or the planetary boundaries or so if the purpose is right and the product and the service eventually is right, but the processes or the side effects as well. So it contributes in one way, but in other ways it does. It has a a bad. How to argue that as well.
Yeah, Victoria, please.
Sorry, only because this was supposed to be part of my introduction. So when I talked about governance being goals and parameters, goals are what are you maximizing for, and parameters are, and what are the minimum thresholds you try to achieve. So that can include, we're not going to go beyond this much risk, but it also can be, we're not going to pay people less than this because these are our values. But, and if you're purpose driven, it will also be, or even if you're long-term self-interested, it will be, and we are not going to destroy the climate, destroy biodiversity, just make inequality worse. But you're clear about what that means for decisions in your organization. That's what governments should do by setting those parameters. So in the British Standard on purpose-driven organizations, it says that, yes, a purpose is your strategic contribution to long-term well-being for all, but that is necessarily delivered in a way that doesn't destroy the basis of long-term well-being for all, which is just logically obvious, but it needs to be spelled out. So principle 3 is all about that. And that's also the ESG agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Great. And I guess it will help to move to the next part, which is about understanding how this comes to life in practice in companies. And I think that could help. So I want to start with a little bit of purpose, please. And coming from the purpose statement, I want to hear if you guess what is the company behind this statement. Any taker, anybody? Sounds pretty generic.
Yeah.
Like for everyone.
And actually, what's interesting, if you note in a lot of purposes, especially of big companies, because they don't quite understand purpose. They just repeat the meta purpose. So it's just long-term well-being put in a different
Yeah,
form,
yeah.
isn't it? Is this what you was the point that you're going to make?
That's where I'm going.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's fine, it's fine. No, I think we break down into what is purpose and how the meta purpose is the point of the iceberg. You know, it's not about crafting the sentence, but it's more what are the actions that are underneath, right? But still, this is a real purpose, and so,
Can you hit the country of origin?
no, but I would need the color of the company. Yes, yeah. So, and for them, again, this is the meta purpose, this is just a communication touchline, but if you go deeper into what they're doing, and I will show you some examples, they want to deliver on that through their positive impact on the work in terms of communities work, but also sourcing of raw material and helping customers to live a more sustainable life at home. And I'll show you an example of the work that they're doing. Second example, guess, inspire and develop the builders of tomorrow. Yes, good point. This is, the color is red.
There you go.
Oh. It is a family business that aim to fulfill their mission, helping children grow and develop to their full potential to create, play, a dedicated effort driven by the Lego branded identity. This is taken from the website, but then we will see some examples of how they bring this to life. Final example, final guess, make 100% late-free the norm in chocolate. No? What do you think? I heard something, Lint, no. No, it's a Dutch company. Yes, please repeat it.
Tony Chocolonely.
Exactly, Tony Chocolonely. It's a very interesting case of a medium-sized company, I would say, a B Corp, but it's getting pretty big in Europe. That is focusing on making 100% slave-free the norm in cocoa, in chocolate, not just their own business. They want to use their business to establish and raise the bar of the chocolate industry as a whole. Very interesting. So, again, hinting on what Vittoria said before, these were just the meta purposes, the point of the iceberg. But what we know is that the practice of purpose management inside organization is made by many components. So it comes from the framing of purpose, which is about forging a narrative based on your values as well as your contribution to society, and articulate this in internal and external documents, defining it. But that's not only what purpose is. Purpose is about formalizing it. Once this practice is defined, translating into internal policies across routine practices from all the different functions, and translating into actions as well as KPIs to track those actions. And then realizing it, which means, taking this promise and not just transform the organization from the inside, but also adding impact outside, eventually realizing this contribution through multi-stakeholder partnership, executing social impact programs, but also setting boundaries for value creation. And yesterday, there was a very good point about how can I do purpose when I have so many other things on my list? Purpose helps you to say no to things that don't matter to your purpose. So realizing purpose would also mean that as a company, you delist certain products from your repertoire that don't help you reach that goal. So one example, for example, from IKEA, a new initiative that they launched in the US a few months ago is the Sellback program. So they're setting up a new business model that is about circularity. So they are going to buy back secondhand IKEA furniture, fix it when it's broken, and resell it to a secondhand market, right? Again, that's a very interesting and a big effort for a company to set up completely new business that is doing this. And I think it's very interesting because they're also providing some information again to people how they can repurpose some of the IKEA furniture to give them not only a second life, but even a third life, to do something else with their furniture. So again, an pressing him into that direction, and we better understand what do they mean with that purpose statement that sounds pretty generic, you know, when we go into the action. Another example from a legal, again, they're small things, but they can help understand what the companies meant with their purpose. They launched some kits, Lego kit, for example, to help children dealing with anxiety and stress when they're going through medical appointments. And they recreated some of the major tests that were done, like an MRI scan, so kids can play and build it. And by doing that, they're less stressed. We all know, people that have kids here, I have 2 kids, how they, through play, they know and face challenges and barriers, you know, and I think this is a brilliant understanding for a company that wants to do that and help kids. And then there is the example of Tony Chocolonely, that I want to show you a short video, which is their manifesto video on how they decided to raise the bar in the chocolate industry as a whole by eradicating child labor. We can find it later and then. Again, about Tony Chocolonely, not a fancy cool videos, fortunately, but I have another one for you later. It's but much more important, I would say, is from a legal perspective, what they have done is to create this Tony's mission lock, which is a legal mechanism that secures our mission for the rest of eternity, regardless of shareholder structure. So they created a separate entity that is own shares of the company. So they're not just a committee that tell you what is right and what is wrong about the mission, but there is a separate entity that owns share of the company and is responsible to deliver their mission that they call purpose. I mean, in the case is the mission to achieve their purpose. And it's interesting because again, we're seeing how they're changing the fabric of their ownership structure, and we know how important is the ownership structure for an organization. Because if you make promise and claims, but then there is no commitment behind, and you're still reporting to your shareholders, we know that things are not going to change, right? Whereas these guys, they decide, okay, we need to address this in terms of our legal structure and create an independent yet only yet an organism that owns the share of the company to be able to deliver on that. So it's a very interesting example of, you know, formalizing purpose to the DNA of the company. So before we move on, are there questions in terms of the key concept now that you have seen the different layers of purpose from framing, formalizing, and realizing? Any comments or questions? Yeah, 2 questions.
So the introduction is very much for it, and your take forward of that work just sparked something off in my mind. Don't, if you were some thought of purpose and things like that. All right, thank you. Microphone. That's all. I'll shout, I don't know. And I remember something from when I was about 10. And it's the parable of the rich fool. And I don't know if it, so it's Christian doctrine, and I apologize, I'm not overtly Christian at all, but I remember this from school, and it's the rich farmer that wants to have wealth and possessions. And that's all he wants is wealth and possessions. So his purpose is, I'm going to make profits. And God says to him, oh, you fool, you've missed the whole point of life, and I'm going to take your life tonight. What's the point of having all that if you don't do anything with it? And this is in, I just looked it up actually, Luke chapter 20, whatever it is. But that's 2,000 years old. And that's what this is, that's what this is 2,000 years later. don't be the rich fool. Why are you idolizing possessions rather than thinking what you can do for all people and the planet? It's not a question really, it was a point that, yeah, wait a minute, you're right. And it's been right for 2,000 years. So,
And just to broaden that out maybe a little bit, because I would agree with you, but I'd say from all the major religions, we're obviously very, broad here. It is the lesson that wise humans have been trying to teach generations for, absolutely millennia. And then we institutionalized and locked into our governance systems the very thing we were told to be very careful with. So yes, it's a little bit of an
Absolutely, that's a very good point. Thank you for sharing that, because I've been doing some work as part of my research also in understanding the history of corporate purpose, and it traces back the first companies ever built. For example, even at the time of the Roman Empire, there was the Rome, they would call public societanorum, which were different companies set up by private companies set up on the empire to build infrastructure. They were generating profit, but their purpose was clear and set in stone. And so it was from the beginning, these companies, they were purpose driven. So we're not talking about a new concept here. We're talking about something that has been there since the Roman Empire and probably even before. And even in the charter of the East Indian Company or the different major corporations that were set up, the purpose was always clear. It's the last, I would say, 50 years probably since the neoliberal, Friedman, that started saying, the purpose of business is business, maximizing shareholder. But if we look at the time span of our society, purpose has been there for more than 2,000 years, and then in the last 50 years of our existence as a society, we are now shifting to something else, and that's why our job is not to bring something new, but it's actually to bring back an old concept.
And update it with the fact that we know that this breakdown of our social systems, because how purpose would have been acted in the old days would not have understood what the social and environmental systems that humans could actually destroy if companies were big enough and human populations were big enough.
Yeah, so one more question, then we have the Q&A at the end. So, but please.
I think I'm loud enough. Thank you. Just wondering, Victoria, whether in your research you considered the type of ownership of an organization as a moderating factor in a way, because it seems to me that just like in the example that you started with, the family-owned bakery, if a business is still family-owned, which many of these bigger companies still are, you mentioned Lego, Tony Chocoloni is still family-owned, and I think IKEA is also still family-owned. So whether that seems to moderate a lot more the sense of purpose, the fulfillment of that purpose, probably goes back to the time when all businesses were your own family sole tradership, right? And you stand for that with your everything you own and all your name and your family reputation and so on. Whether you consider it as a moderating factor and whether the real goal is then to look at what happens with different ownership structures.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great point. And absolutely, I haven't investigated yet on that subject, but it's definitely on my list of research questions because it's very fascinating family businesses and the way they have a different language. When you talk to family businesses, they don't play a finite game. They're playing an infinite game. You can tell in the language that they use. They talk about generations. They talk about legacy. They have just different vocabulary, and so it really speaks to this. So, not just because my own family business, which had other challenges, though, but yes, this idea of longevity, it's always there, and I think that's an important part. At the same time, there are interesting cases of traditional publicly listed companies that manage that transition. But yeah, it's an hostile legal ownership, I would say, to bring the longevity. And I remember one of the first things that Paul Polman did when he was appointed CEO of Unilever in 2010, he said, I don't want, we're not going to have shareholder reporting and meeting every quarter, but it will be just once a year. And there was so much pressure from shareholders to say like, no, it's impossible. You cannot do that. We need to know the progress. We need where and it's like, if you want me in, that's what I'm going to bring. Because obviously, if you have to report to shareholders all your strategy every quarter, and that's what public company needs to do, So it's impossible to have a longevity in your strategy, right? So that's, for example, the first thing he said. But it was, powerful, strong leader with a clear vision. If you don't have that, you're just eventually a puppet into a business as usual system. And if you have to report every quarter to shareholders and explain them what are the choices that you're making, for the next generation, it's not going to work. So I agree that public listed company is a hostile equity ownership structure if you want to bring this mindset. It is possible, but it's going to be a very hard journey. Yeah? So there are many other interesting legal ownership popping up. Like, for example, in Germany, there is Verantwortliches Eigentum, which means steward ownership structure, or also cooperative are gaining momentum, and also or other mechanisms like the Chocoloni stuff with shared ownership to people that have a stake, so stakeholders, they own some of the shares, so they help you achieving your mission. So there's a lot of work in terms of equity ownership. Yeah. But I said let's move on, and then we have the Q&A, right?
Yeah, exactly. So let's finish the presentation and then we move to the Q&A.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because there's more literature on this subject, and both Victoria and I are happy to share books, articles on this topic that can satisfy all your curiosity. But what I want to share is also a little bit of the perspective from a practitioner as well. What happened? How do companies become purposeful? And I think this is also I presented it yesterday. What we're seeing is that people are very excited when we talk about change. Yes, it's amazing. But then when it's about what do I change, there is way less who wants to change, and there is way less participation in this debate. Also because it is a journey, right? So becoming purposeful is not something that you do from one day to another. There are different steps, and some of these steps are hard and less fulfilling, and like it goes from, the very, a bit old school CSR thinking of avoiding risk through purpose and sustainability to eventually leading through it, where it's all about, business model, advocacy, and purpose. So it's a long journey, and it's hard to say where you are on this journey, but we can see that, for example, if you take the footwear industry, there are companies that have a very different application of these principles. Companies that are using CSR or sustainability or a bit of purpose more to avoid risk, and others that are using it to lead, where the sustainable purpose for them is the main reason of being as a company. And yesterday as well, I presented 3 starting points on how companies enter the purpose conversation, where one was about purpose-led strategy, how a company decided that they want to make their purpose ingrained in the strategy from the beginning. And these are some of companies I work with. And in this case, we were working directly with the management, the CEO, and the board, to be able to change the strategy. There were cases of purpose-led innovation, so a company that wanted to start by doing something purposeful before defining their own purpose, which I think is a very interesting approach as well, because we can conceptualize and create beautiful frameworks, but then if it doesn't bring any action, there is a problem. So also starting from innovation is a very interesting hands-on approach that I've seen working very well. And that is also a matter of leadership, how you start internally. with it? How do you make your people truly connect to the reason why the organization exists? So there are different ways on how the purpose conversation can land inside businesses. That's also why for academic it's hard and frustrating somehow this conversation, because they're like, yeah, but are you into innovation? Are you into leadership? Are you into strategy? What is this thing? You know, it cannot be everywhere, you know. But what I'm seeing that how organization change, it's a bit of like the metaphor of a marathon, you know, like there is, I don't know how many of you have run a competition. I know Phil did recently in London, a London Marathon, all that. But you know, there is a lot of excitement at the beginning, you know, a lot of euphoria and energy, and then companies gradually start realizing the challenges of doing it. You know, that's why yesterday was a very relevant question about greenwashing, you know, like how it is a risk. And it is definitely a big risk, particularly because purpose transformation are a really holistic change of the companies, like we have seen in terms of what they're contributing to. So people can get very excited at the beginning, but then they realize throughout the way, and maybe their intention were genuine at the beginning, but then they realize that, oh my God, it's gonna be like, we have to change everything, you know? We have to change our legal structure, we have to change our relationship with shareholders, we have to change our policies. And so there is, you know, we lose some runners, let's say, throughout the way, which is good actually, because that you want to keep the ones that are truly committed. And our job is also as a consultant to always give them some intermediate steps they can reach, you know, so they keep the motivation on this journey, because I believe, and yesterday also Vittorio discussed about what are the true intention of business leaders, you know, like it comes from expecting people to actually having genuine approach and believing that the nature of human being is to care for each other, care for the community, care for the environment. But then it's co-opted throughout the way by the business as usual system. But the innate motivation of people is to do good, right? So with that intention, we try somehow to clear the path from people that want to do good. And what we're seeing from our case studies of different companies is that there are some patterns in terms of acceptance of the purpose development process, where you somehow always have these proportions of people inside an organization. You always have people that are unresponsive, to say the least, or I would say they actively resist the transformation. Then you have a late majority that somehow it's waiting to see how the purpose things is gonna take off or not, but they are undecided. Then you have on the other side early adopters and pioneers. Like the pioneers, they are on board from the beginning and they want to do it, whereas the early adopters, they also get pretty excited and they immediately start integrating it into the organization. Yeah, and what really matters is for us, and probably for you, I would say, thinking about your own organization, is focus on the pioneers and early adopters. Focus on the people that get it. Because the risk is that you might lose so much energy and momentum by trying to convince people that either they will never change or they will wait till anybody else has changed. And while you have done that, you yourself have lost motivation, the rest of the team as well. And the rest of the team is like, why are these people focusing on, you know, the least convinced instead of, you know, giving me a platform to shine? So I would say, try, you know, to start small and create a community of people that really get it. And from that, scale it to a bigger momentum building movement. Yeah, so the key takeouts from my intervention really are also based on what Vittoria said before. First, realizing that we're living in a traditional capitalist paradigm of business as usual, that's what we have in our surrounding, and second is that purpose is an anomaly in this current paradigm. So it's something new. So don't underestimate how different it is. It might sound like an old tale from the Bible, and it is based on that, but it would be an alien concept in the reality where we live in. So don't treat it like it's easy and taken for granted, because it might be disappointing, because it goes deeper than that. At the same time, purpose is not just a statement. It's not just those catchy phrases that we hear, but those are just the point of the iceberg, the meta purpose. There is a lot underneath, and it's made of framing, formalizing, and realizing, like the example that we've seen from the other companies. At the same time, purpose can actually transform existing businesses in force for good. The example that I present of the project we work on, they are not breakthrough blue sky, white sky, whatever, innovation. They come from existing businesses, so there is a lot that can be unlocked from existing organization when they work on purpose. And then finally, at the same time, defining activating purpose requires hands-on work, and it's not just a strategy, but it goes through innovation, leadership, and many other things that have to change inside the organization. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much. Now we have 10 minutes left for extra Q&A questions.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you, Vito, for sharing all the insights and experiences. So as Vito told you, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Okay, so thank you, Vic, for your good presentation. I shortened your name. In the Philippines, it's when we call Vic. Okay, to all of you, good morning. I am John. This is an address, the president of Plenary State University, Philippines. First, it is not my mission also is just to encourage professionals, researchers to visit and to have a collaboration in our university, because we are having 46,000 students enrolled across disciplines and campuses, and we have 1,700 professionals, and of course researchers. First, I would like to congratulate everyone, especially our lecturer this morning. But of course, I learned a lot regarding the strategies, the pedagogy, and the paradigm that he had shared today. But of course, I'm looking forward about the other tool in order to incorporate in the different paradigms, methodologies that he had shared with us this morning regarding the process of the reassessment and triangulation in terms of research output and the build of business. I would like to find out the other and the intents of reassessment on how this sustainability in terms of academic research and of course in the industry, the outcomes and the output mechanism, so that we could also improve myself and even my business. I'm also a businessman. While I am listening to Vic and of course to the work of Victoria, I texted my son, we need to reassess your accomplishment in your business so that we could be able, whether we are really serving to the community, and that is the purpose. Thank you so much and good morning.
Yeah, please.
While we're handing that over, maybe briefly to say online, and it's on the website that I mentioned there, I was part of an editing team for a special issue on repurposing universities for sustainable human progress. And it takes these ideas and analyzes universities to show that universities are stuck in business as usual because they feel this is the way to serve society, and then how we can change this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have one, yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you. And just another example, I suppose I'd be interested to know if this is already one of your case studies, or you have a similar example. A little bit of nostalgia for me as well. One of my first jobs, teenage jobs, was with a shop called The Body Shop, which a lot of you may know. It's international, and I was struck by the paradigm shift and the initial diagrams.
you presented, because, I mean, for me, that company, and certainly the late Anita Roddick, who founded it, was it ahead of its time? Because we know historically there's been a lot of purpose-driven activity, but I found that working there in the 90s and looking at that business today, it appears to have gone backwards. And I wondered if there are examples where we can learn from something that actually is pretty good, and how has it changed, and how can it come full circle to get back to almost a pretty good example of a purpose-driven organisation in the 80s and 90s, which has gone backwards today, and can it come back? So I don't know if you have already looked at other examples of that company, the Body Shop, and similar activities and advances in their paradigm shift and going full circle as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing. That's a great example, both of good and bad cases, right? In terms of the good side of it, I agree. The Body Shop was really clear in terms of the contribution to the well-being, and in the priorities they had, right, between profit and purpose, and that's something we discussed also yesterday, and how they were able to prioritize purpose over profit. So purpose was their end, you know, and then the profit was just the mean, which sounds like a basic simple things to do, but actually working with companies that have a purpose, it's something that we realized on the first day we step into the office. What is first? Is it purpose or profit? And in that case, they had, you know, clarity on it, which they lost, and it was eventually co-opted into a business as usual mindset. It's another example that I have is even Unilever, the company I work with. You know, they once Paul Polman left after 7 years of being the CEO, you know, pushing the sustainability agenda. It was another CEO that's trying to continue his agenda, but he didn't have necessarily that same visionary power. And eventually, shareholders started criticizing his commitment to purpose, and he was just fired by shareholders, you know, because he wasn't convincing enough. And then the company is now, you know, completely changed. So I would say that, yeah, unfortunately, those are cycles, and we have to push for, you know, the good cycles. But I think some businesses go back to that, and it kind of reinforces how much pressure there is on them to stick to the current paradigm versus trying to change the system. Yeah, Victoria, please.
Yeah, I mean, super points. I would just say one word, which I've said a lot, which is governance. Because we cannot rely on the next charismatic leader. What Paul Polman didn't do, and there may have been very good reasons for this, but is to not embed it in decision-making structures that routinize, including in the ownership. Now, he might not have been able to shift the ownership structure. He tried. He said, don't invest in us if you don't believe in our purpose. That was the only power he had over that ownership structure. But he could also have changed perhaps more of the culture through the decision-making policy. And so, yeah, I'd say governance.
Yeah, which goes back to the point about equity as well. Yeah, there are some equity forms like the public listed company that are just hostile to this thinking. So maybe some visionary leaders make it through that model, but then the moment they leave, which was also the case of the Body Shop, the system, old system kicks back in unless there have been substantial change to the DNA of the company, like changing the equity ownership structure. Any more questions? Yes, please. Oh, yeah, sorry, please. One more question.
Yes, well, thank you. Something.
Yeah.
It's on.
Okay. I just wanted to ask more about some of the German businesses you were talking about. The German Mittelstand is well known for having that family business focus, and also a lot of connections to community through that. And I was wondering if you have any insight into that tradition. I'm just curious.
Yeah, we'll maybe talk about it later, but yes, we work also with medium enterprise, and it's a very interesting case on how they can really transform because of the relatively contained size. Yeah, so for many founders in Europe, they represent the backbone of the business. Like in Germany, I think they are like 90% of the turnover of the company, small and medium enterprise. So that is definitely an important work. It's often underestimated, you know, because we think of purpose more for corporations, big for corporations, whereas actually it's something that can transform small to medium enterprise. And the case of Olivia Garden is a case of a small, medium German enterprise, well, Belgian German enterprise that took this purpose as their strategy and they completely transformed all their operations. So I agree that the conversation shouldn't exclude the small to medium enterprise because they're really the backbone of our society, particularly in Europe.
Well, we're sorry you have to stop because it's coffee break time. Now, if you're interested to know more about all these topics, Vito is going to have a parallel session at 12:20.
Yeah. Yeah, I will present studies that we've done with different organizations about the future of corporate purpose. So please join me. And we can discuss.
Okay, okay, sorry, time to over, okay?
We can talk about it in the break. Yeah, it's not.
Or in the break. If you want. Thank you very much. So if you like to have a coffee, you should go to the right where we have the atrium and you can enjoy your coffee.
Just before you all go, I recommend that you refresh your program so it's up to date. Grab your cup of coffee and move into the talking circle. Don't be shy, pick a room, go in and introduce yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Yeah.
It is one thing of it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After
Yeah, for me, I think, whenever this finish, I think. Yeah, so.
Then I have my.
That's lunch, yeah, but I have yeah, for you, but what time? Lunch around.
Okay, then it's good. Which room am I into?
I'll take,
Okay, yeah, just Brad, that's great, straight to
Yeah.
after lunch.
Okay, I'm going to Ravi, the community manager, and ask her. I'm going to ask you to do the same.
But yeah. I am, the other thing I'm thinking of. I work in the Center for Professional Learning. And I think I have a good draft of my opinion of this. But
What you're going to do. Yeah.
I think that's the other, that's one of the things.
As well to help not only to come and run. It's interesting.
you tell me what I have to say.
I
thinking of this about on the importance of the program. This is like I'm thinking about the national conference, and it's a pleasure to be here. And be hosted by and to meet people, you know, a lot of things about things how and I'm just considering like where all where does it get stuck? And
Yeah,
you know,
you liked it?
it's interesting because we
Yeah.
need, like,
So yeah, it's a
the
pleasure.
teachers,
Today,
it's
rather
they
than
ask
asking, and they were to open it up. So disappointed.
which contributes to their well-being.
Today, yeah, I did. Tempting told me
But
around 40.
then I think
it, yeah. Yeah.
focuses.
So you like it?
less
You
on
like the
sometimes
theme? Yeah.
authors who
And
are
the guests, they are really
Where
very
the
well, yeah.
in our case, are like individuals.
Yeah.
But then I go back to school and something.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the aim, is to learn.
And so
We always got
about like
conferences.
one is
Yeah.
education.
Yes.
How could
Go ahead,
this
have coffee.
contribute?
And
How could the program
remember that at 12:30,
beyond
maybe we have the
teachers
lunch,
who
so
are
you should be here.
Like
At
the
12.
larger call.
Yeah.
The global climate collective, and I, you know, there are the calls from the UN. I mean, what are the and then I'm thinking like, well, then where does it get stuck, right? Like, what are the
Because it's
obstacles?
very,
Why
it's
not?
really very easy, it's going to be seated,
They
lunch.
I went to all of the policies, and yeah, I guess one thing I'm thinking about is just how, like, what are the larger conversations that would come?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
from this program.
Yeah.
how we
Yeah.
contribute to the whole-
Is that a plan?
I'm thinking, you know, like,
Do it now,
is there
but please tell me. so,
research we could
Yeah,
be
okay.
doing, or things we could be speaking to that could eventually like speak to what and policy folks need to hear in order to you know, make these like more systemic changes. Is it products that like open access products that we can keep their website, right? Like and project sketches that could be open access that teachers could, which, and I think we're doing some of these things already.
No, just use your laptop. Yeah, that, so you have the more manipulation, you can manipulate it as you want.
Okay.
Okay. Are you
Interviews,
going
but
to,
like,
you're going to be in the other end?
I'm curious, what are the,
Yeah, so it's the talking thing now.
what are the
The circle?
Ah, okay.
And then after talking circle.
Where is it?
Crowdsourcing research, like through the teacher, check.
Well, I haven't checked, but I'm going to, yeah.
I don't know enough of them.
See what I
I think one thing this I'm curious about
But
is
after that, we'll be
What
back
you-
in here. That way.
just to hear the.
Yeah, back in here.
Let
after.
me ask questions, please.
Like, what would they
Well, I
need in
got
order
confused.
to,
Where to put my,
like, what evidence would they need in order to implement this at a more systemic
Yeah.
levels? And then how could we
Yeah.
help collect that evidence through some of this program?
That's
That's all.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. I think I'm thinking of those things too, and like, I think one of the humbling notions for me is, and I think this comes from my experience as a teacher, the limited impact even policy has.
Right, yeah.
Un lugar donde en la farmacia donde las paredes de video, pero no puede la foto de la puede ayudarme a la buscar. Entonces, esta me parece súper en esa pues me parece sí, en realidad hay un la de la para ver su vincula acá. Pensé, o sea, la foto está en por eso se llama por un momento era
Então, quando nós vamos para o país, então,
We have a croissant, on the chocolate, what you want. Yes. Yes. It doesn't have the presentations that.
No, it's not in my name.
Are you sure? José Santana. Okay. Okay, then.
Verify probably the original program was.
You want one chocolate to eat here to go there?
I will be back. Okay, when the foundation.
You want to eat here?
No, I will.
Ah.
Why?